Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It's been a little while since we've been able to actually do a broadcast. We just want to thank you all once again for being patient. We were having some electrical issues. We have worked through that. Thankfully, everyone is safe. So thank you for everyone's concerns and comments that we received when we posted the video explaining why we weren't seen online very much. And honestly, it was not safe to keep our electronics plugged in. We were really probably risking it every time we plugged in our phones. It was just an unreal situation, but thank you all for sticking around and being patient. Let's get right into our report for tonight, 2019, April 9th. Here we are taking a look at our solar wind speed sitting at a 457.1 kilometers per second with a density of about 10.6. And check out the sunspot here, guys. AR 2738. I thought when we were looking at this information a few days back that this would be a very large sunspot, but surprisingly enough, it's sunspot number 12. And we'll go to our space weather section here at the grandsolarminimum.com. First of all, this sunspot is producing very minor B-class flares at this time, so nothing stronger than that to this point. KP indice has been averaging at a 2 to a 3. And let's take a zoomed in look here at our star, this sunspot here. Look at the size of this thing. This core is dark, and when you put the Earth scale to this sunspot, when you compare it to real-time size, this sunspot is massive. Let's see if I can get this to play, folks. Sorry about that. There we go. Taking a look at it in motion, very large, dark core, but again, very tight. So sunspot number is 12, and it's clear. It doesn't seem that anything else is forming behind it or around it. But very interesting sunspot nonetheless. We are officially in solar minimum. A lot of folks are in agreement that we will see the peak of this solar minimum sometime in late 2019 and early 2020. And minor geomagnetic rest was for today earlier. Now we did reach KP index of 4 at one point over the last 24 hours. Now it's quieted down to a 3. But it just was below the G1 class geomagnetic storm levels, so nothing but beautiful auroras to look at tonight as far as the effects from the minor solar storm. Let's take a look at our sun right now. Let's put it in motion as well. So there's our sunspot. Very active, very bright, but only a sunspot number of 12. And other than that, we're looking at the sun right now. There's no large coronal holes that seem to be forming. So for the most part, geomagnetic unrest at this point would have to come from a possible CME if this sunspot chooses to release a C-class flare like it did the last time it came across Earth facing. And I want to point this out. And, it's things like what I'm getting ready to show you that I would have never paid attention to if it wasn't for being friends with people like TSM Solar Observations. What we're looking at here is a lineup of the solar system at this current time. And you guys know the whole story here, where all the planets are on one side of the plane. And what I'm talking about, just so we can all be on the same page here. Let me get my handy dandy arrow here. So here we have a line right here. All right. And on this side of the sun, we have a lack of planetary action. All right. Everything's over on this side. So the magnetic connection is stronger to these planets on this side of the sun because they're all grouped in the same area, especially right here. Okay. So right now we're experiencing a weaker connection because of where we are in the orbit. And with your gas giants in place where they should be, again, this is a spot where you tend to kind of be a little bit more on alert when you look at solar weather, and especially with the sunspots. Now, I've got an article that talks about solar cycle 24 and 25, so we'll get a little bit more into that as well. But just an interesting lineup right now, and wanted to point that out, that we are in the weaker part of the magnetic connection. So, stuff like when you have a CME and stuff like that, they could be a little more harmful to the radio waves and stuff like that, blackouts, minor ones, but nothing major, unless we're talking about 1859 Carrington event, which no one here at this channel is predicting that, but just I was reading an article about that, and again, that's later in the show as well, so I'll just save that for later. We'll take a look at the rear end of the sun, the backside, as we look at that bright region coming across now the eastern limb, and behind it really just some weak spots at the 180. Other than that, we're looking at the possibility of this AR 2738 will look like it holds itself together until it gets to the western limb. So other than that, typical solar minimum type stuff here, guys. You're going to see sunspots and solar minimum. We are reaching the peak of the minimum, and then we'll start getting back into a little bit more action with solar cycle 25. Take a look at our TSI reading for April 1st, 2019. Came in at 1360.62. As you see, we have had ratings all over the place for TSI, up and down, very, I think, more frequently than usual, but kind of leveling out once again towards the downside of things. We always watch it around the 0.6 value and between the 0.7 value, and rarely does it get around the 0.7 value. Here, recently, it's been there a couple times, but now we're starting to see the trend. It appears that we are seeing a trend heading downwards again, close to the lower values of 0.62. All right, guys, let's get into some climate weather, or worldwide weather, I should say. Extreme rainfall, more than 2 months worth of rain in 9 hours. Severe floods hit Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Now, first, when you see this, you're thinking, holy hell, 2 months of rain in 4 hours? But mind you, this part of the world receives 5.9 inches of rain in 2 months. But that fell in 4 hours on Monday night, April 8th. This is more than the average for the whole month of April, which is 3.74. So they almost doubled it. Well, close to doubling it. Copacabana, fourth, near famous beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema. Is that how you say that, Mari? Ipanema? Received around 9.68 inches of rain in 9 hours. That's 2.6 months of rain in April. If confirmed, it will mark the highest total 24 hours ever recorded in the city of Rio de Janeiro. 9.09 inches in a 24-hour period in a botanical garden neighborhood. Lots of footage here, like always at watchers.news. Rain quickly turned roads into rivers, sweeping up cars and uprooting trees. Schools have been closed and residents urged to avoid all non-essential traffic. At least 6 people have been killed, officials said on Tuesday. The death includes 2 adults, a minor. Both were buried in a car by a mudslide. Another mudslide hit Crivella, leaving 2 women dead, fire department officials had said. It says here 3 people were killed. In northeastern Brazil, April 5th, several days of heavy rain increased rivers and lakes, lagoons, flooding homes and plantations. The deaths occurred in the Piauí capital, Teresina. The city recorded more than 7.8 inches of rain between April 1st and April 6th, 2019, and 3.3 inches of rain in 24 hours on April 4th and April 5th. And we will put the links in the description later on in the show. And while we're talking about floods, it's all over. Severe flash floods hit Accra. At least 7 people dead or missing in Ghana. At least 5 people were killed and 2 remain missing after a surprisingly strong storm hit the capital Accra, Ghana, late April 7th, 2019. It says here that heavy rain lasted less than 2 hours, leaving behind flooded roads and scores of stranded motorists. Running water spilled with chalk drains onto the roads, with Kwame Nkrumah interchange left pedestrians with no choice but to walk through the water, which was around knee-high level. The worst affected area was Kwame Nkrumah circle where most of the roads were impassable. The area now unofficially represents the benchmark of Accra foods. Authorities say they have already begun desolating storm drains ahead of rainy seasons that they were getting ready to enter into. Heavy rain also hit last year, June 18th, 2018, causing destructive floods across the city and leaving at least 3 people dead and 4 people were missing. The floods caused chaos across the capital, left many people trapped in their homes and vehicles. Local media reported numerous destroyed homes in the greater Accra region, where 3.3 feet of water. That's how deep it was as far as floodwaters. The flooding has again exposed poor drainage system in Accra, which comes in for severe criticism every rainy season. But the difference here is that we are seeing more and more extreme rainfall. And, look at the village we're talking about here, guys. It's not like we're talking about state-of-the-art infrastructure. So these are the areas that are most vulnerable. And then, places in the United States that have older infrastructure, places like Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, Boston. We're talking very old infrastructure. And yes, there is work being done to upgrade some of these. But, if you're in an area like this, and this is just a minimum type weather phenomenon. All right, this has nothing to do with grand solar minimum, but this could be a more frequent scene during the grand solar minimum. All right, so continue on with worldwide weather climate news here. Sierra Nevada snowpack at 162% of normal. California water supply dream. Noticed they avoid calling it an, I don't know what dream he was implying for, but sorry about that, folks. Snowpack at the station was at 200% of average, while statewide snowpack was at 162% of average. This is great news for the water supply, but water conservation remains a way of life in California, rain or shine. According to the California Department of Water Resources, the state has experienced more than 30 atmospheric rivers since the start of water year, 6 in February alone, and statewide snow water equivalent has nearly tripled since February 1st, officials had said. It says here Phillips Station now stands at 106.5 inches of snow depth and a snow water equivalent of 51 inches. A little rusty, folks. Which is 200% of average for the location, against 162 average statewide. And of course, being California, based on snowpack numbers, we have potential for some minor flooding due to melting snow. We remind folks to always stay vigilant and aware. This is according to the DWR chief of the Division of Flood Management. Here, the dark purple is in the 30 to 40 feet range. You do see some pink in there. I'm, imagining that's the extreme elevations, but we are seeing 50-foot plus snowpack right now. The state's largest 6 reservoirs currently hold between 106, Oroville, and 132, Malone's, of their historical averages for this date. Lake Shasta, California's largest surface reservoir, is at 109% of its historical average, and it sits at 89% capacity. So interesting enough, the flood is over, but the responsible thing is the conservation of water. And, when you think about it, when your state's been in a drought for 3+ years, extreme dry weather, the wildfires that we've had out there that have devastated parts of California, it's understandable for people to still be conservative with the water, to be alert. These types of years that we've had out there, the last 3 years, especially fires, we've had a couple doozies. Nothing like what we used to see in the 20s and 30s, but still, we've had some pretty bad fires out there. So these people are out in California. I think their management is doing the right thing out there. And like I said, you can tell these people are scarred from the drought seasons. They're going to take advantage of the surplus, no doubt, and continue to be conservative in ways that's helped them to get through the drought in the first place. And hopefully they build a new surplus. And a little solar science tonight. So NOAA a lot of people have been talking about this. NOAA wanted to point out that no indication that we are currently approaching moderate minimum type minimum in solar activity. Now, let's think about this really quick, guys. This is the same NOAA that predicted that El Nino at a 90% chance of development in October of 2018. Continue to push that 90% all the way through December almost. So, and when El Nino finally did form, there wasn't a lot of gloating. I'll give NOAA credit for that. But there also was a period of time where NOAA was trying to explain to us that we were going to experience a strong El Nino. And now the same NOAA is trying to convince people all around the world that we are not approaching a moderate type minimum in solar activity. I just don't know how credible NOAA is at this point, in my opinion. But this is what we talked about, and not a lot of channels will come out and read these things, because there are people out there who believe that we are in the onslaught of the grand solar minimum. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I have no real reason to believe that we are or not, other than the fact that from what the information that I've seen, it makes more sense that we do see a solar cycle 25 before we reach any type of grand solar minimum. So, but the thing that's important to point out is that this particular minimum has been deeper, and it's been a weaker solar cycle over the last 200 years. Okay, so what does that mean when you read papers that talk about we haven't seen this deep of a minimum or a weak of a solar cycle in 200 years? And this is why you still have to monitor this situation year to year, decade to decade, because we're seeing signs of a weaker sun. And each cycle that we go through, we're still seeing signs of increased cosmic rays entering our atmosphere. They'll continue to influence the atmosphere with seeding our clouds, highly charged particles getting into our atmosphere because the magnetic connection, the magnetosphere, is weak. We'll continue to see these heavy precipitation events, especially getting really bad in 2019, 2020. And like this article talks about here, Solar Cycle 25 prediction panel experts say that Solar Cycle 25 may have a slow start, meaning this could be a very quiet minimum, which we are expecting the real beginning of it late 2019 or early 2020. But Solar Cycle 25 prediction panel experts said Solar Cycle 25 may have a slow start, but is anticipated to peak with a solar maximum occurring between 2023 and 2026 and a sunspot range of 95 to 130. Now this is well below average number of sunspots, with typically ranges of 140 to 220, and I believe Solar Cycle 24 was somewhere in between the 80 to 120 range. Here we go, 82 spots. It says here the maximum for April 2014 with a peak average of 82 spots. So just to let you know, the peak average was 92 or 82 sunspots in Solar Cycle 24, and now they're saying that we're going to look at a peak range of 95 to 130, which, here we are. This is what we're talking about. We're talking slightly higher numbers in Solar Cycle 25, and to me it's alarming to see almost an identical decline of solar activity once we get past 2026 into the 2030s. That's where I think the real big trouble begins to happen. I mean, look, right here, guys, we're going to notice a lot. We're already experiencing it across the Midwest with all the major flooding out there. It's getting farmers late into their fields to plant. Some of them can't plant because all of their grain has been flood damaged. I mean, so we're already seeing the serious effects of a deep minimum. Now think about going through another decade of these events that continue to happen the way they're happening right now at this rate. Not much is going to change with this next solar cycle. And for all those out there who think that this is going to wake the sun up in 25 and go back to a normal maximum as if it's going to skip a grand minimum cycle, the sun has shown us it's almost right around the same time every time we are due for a grand minimum. The sun does indeed go into its grand minimum. The argument seems to be between if it's going to happen now or if it's going to happen in the 2030s. And I don't think it really, to me, even if your thinking is now and it's not now, there's still a lot of things that have to do with solar forcing variables here. And that's the thing that always kills me when I hear people talk about how people on this side of the fence about the climate, when they say we deny the science. But that's all this channel is based on, is the science of the sun. And, I've seen comments where people said that we're boring, and it's because we're showing the boring, raw science of how this works. Guys, I'm going to have a pretty educated guy on the topic who's going to help us put some perspective on some order on how to present that way, because I know there's a lot of new people that come to our channel. Not everybody understands what we're talking about right now. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do in the future to help communicate to people on how to explain what's happening, the risks, and what to do to prepare for it as well. But that's coming at a later date. But reading on in this article here, guys. So they're saying, and this is a key quote right here, guys. Because a lot of people will twist and turn this into their agenda, but I'll read it word for word. It says, we expect solar cycle 25 to be very similar to cycle 24, another fairly weak cycle preceded by a long, deep minimum. It said panel co-chair Lisa Upton, PhD solar physicist with Space Systems Research Corp. The expectation that solar cycle 25 will be comparable in size to cycle 24 means that the steady decline in solar cycle amplitude seen from cycles 21 to 24 has come to an end, and that there is no indication that we are currently approaching a Maunder minimum type solar activity. All right, so let's clear this up. All this is saying is that we have seen declination of solar cycles from 21 through 24, and some scientists are basing, because solar cycle 25 is going to be slightly above average or above what we just experienced, is triggering the uptick once again of solar activity. And I couldn't disagree with that more. And I don't think the people here writing this article believe that as well. They're presenting the information as given, and that's like I said, this is coming from NOAA. Some of these people are NOAA related, and they've been trying to tell us all year long how El Nino is going to form, 90% confidence. And I'll get to that here in a little bit, but it's starting to peter out already. Also, what's up with that has a 2019 forecast for El Nino, and some interesting things about that as well, as conditions for El Nino could be over by June, July, August, but there's some indication that it could be a moderate to weak El Nino situation again, or near neutral by October of next year. So we'll have to take, that's still far a ways out. I'm impressed with people that can predict these cycles, INSO and everything, but I've seen a couple people who I trust what they say, and weather and other stuff, where they have compared data, matched it up to similar situations and scenarios almost to the T, and it didn't do anything that that person thought that it was going to do. And these are well-respected weather meteorologists and scientists. So, guys, we're entering the unknown with solar cycle 25, and I think I've been saying that since 2017, is that this cycle truly is going to be the unknown. Yes, we've seen some pretty spectacular looking sunspots, but we're talking about one spot, one sunspot region that's the size of 12, the number 12. I mean, we're not talking about, sunspot number 59 here. Or like the last time we saw this sunspot, it was actually at sunspot number 49. So it's decreased in sunspot number count. We'll leave the link in the description. And while we're talking about minimums here, solar minimums and weather conditions, but before I leave this, though, I do want to say that I'll bring up some charts for you guys to look at, and we'll show you where the declination is not ending if you look at previous solar cycles and what we're about to go through. We haven't hit the bottom yet, and that's what I'm saying. This is still the cycle of unknowns. We can't cancel out that we are heading into a grand solar minimum right now. There's so much information to look at and absorb, and hopefully we're going to get a clear answer on that too this summer when we get a chance to talk to Valentina Zarkova once again. But I wanted to point this out real quick too before we move on. There was a study that showed that if we had a Carrington event like 1859 today, we would be looking at about 6.2 trillion in damages. So that's just an interesting number as far as how much damage it would cost. But my question is not so much of the price tag, but the timetable of how quick you could repair the grid after a possible EMP or a large type solar storm that hits the Earth's magnetic field. So interesting to point out there. All right, let's take a look at the hurricane forecast since we're talking about weather. There's a couple different numbers out here. The TSR, they released their earlier predictions back in December of 2018, December 11th to be exact. And guys, I apologize here. The screen I need to adjust. Let's see if I can get just a little bit more here. I'm not getting all the picture. All right. So what we're looking at, and it still didn't get it all. Let's move this slightly so we can take a look at this, and I'll move it back. All right. So this is the predictions for 2019's hurricane season. 12 storms to be named, 5 hurricanes out of this, and about 2 major hurricanes from TSR. The CSU is similar, 13 named storms, 5 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. And AccuWeather is 12 to 14, 5 to 7 of hurricanes, and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. So interesting stats here that everybody's pretty much in agreement that we're not going to see a lot of major hurricanes. It's not going to be an active season. They're basically comparing it close to 2018, really, if you ask me. 2 major hurricanes. I think they had 4 or 5 hurricanes and somewhere in the same area, 14 to 18 named storms. So, I guess the question I want to ask to Al Gore and all of them is, you claim that with the rise of CO2 that man has put in the atmosphere that we're going to see even more severe hurricanes and all that, but yet, major hurricanes are not being predicted more than 2 this year, which is about even from last year's prediction. So we're not seeing that trend yet, Mr. Gore, that you claim we're going to continue to see worse hurricanes over the years to come. While we're talking about lying, we were watching the Weather Channel to get a little information on Wesley, and they were showing a ice glacier that was breaking off into the ocean, and the Weather Channel was telling us that the glaciers all over the world are melting and melting at a very fast pace, and that also is contributing to sea level rise. And I get a little upset with these guys because this year they made some strides in their internet reporting. The weather company by IBM was explaining in some of their cold forecasts that the solar minimum has something to do with these cold temperatures. They didn't get real in depth about it, but the Weather Channel has had 2 articles this winter talking about the sun and its low activity driving the temperatures down, which, I was proud of them for making that step. Then tonight I'm watching this new young guy, and he's talking about, sea level rise because, the ice caps are melting at an alarming rate and whatnot. And, I had to turn the channel. I couldn't watch it. It made me sick. So it's hard. It's like, you rely on the Weather Channel to give you your current, updates with your radars and all that stuff. And then you hear them talk about the climate as if they know exactly what causes warming and, man-made, talking about things that aren't even happening right now, which we had a ton of ice gain this year, which, Grand Solar Minimum, we have bragged about that all year long. Some guy kind of trolled me in a comment section months ago about, oh, you won't show the ice growth because it's weak and it's terrible. And he was right. When we started watching this in 2018, I was like, oh God, this is kind of embarrassing. But then we kind of went through a rapid freeze from December, January, and February, and it strengthened. And going into 2019, we had better ice growth than we had seen in several years. So it'll be interesting to watch where we start from in 2020, as we are predicted to see, I think, less hurricanes this year. And really, I think we'll see cooler temperatures at an earlier part of the summer this year. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but as we continue to get deeper into this minimum, 2019 and 2020 winter is predicted to be a doozy, just like this one was in 2018. 17 and 18 was kind of like the warm-up. But this year and next year, we're really going to see things ramp up. And to me, we've got to come up with better planning and recovery efforts if this kind of weather is going to continue to happen for the next 3 to 5 years, possibly, at least. So here's another thing that's kind of troubling. I'm looking at the farm report, and I'm only going to show this map tonight. And the reason I'm on this map tonight is that we are missing a chunk of information. And again, you can thank NOAA. But in the white part of the United States, those are the states that have decreased in moisture in the soil index. And guys, by the way, we're looking at these numbers here. I know you're looking at the legend like, oh my gosh, it says down at the bottom that above 3, some drying but excessively wet. That's, that means you can't work in the fields at all. But if you look at these numbers, for instance, let's zoom in a little bit more. Let's go in here. All right, so for instance, we're looking at this 11. Well, on this scale here, it's not 11, it's a 1.1. Same thing down here in Louisiana, it's not 22, it's at a 2.2. So let's look up on the legend what that means. And a 2.2 would qualify as more dry weather needed, work delayed. And you look in here in parts of Louisiana where we have 2.9, 4.2, and 3.6. So there is nowhere, obviously, we just had a bunch of rain in the southern part of the region, and I'll get more into that with the GFS report too here on the outlook, because this is only the beginning for the south. And then we go back into the heartland. Right now they're just kind of exhaling from all the flooding they've had up here, and now this new storm, winter storm Wesley, these areas that are in the 9 here in South Dakota, that's going to go way up here in the next 48 hours to 72 hours. So this region here is going to get pummeled with moisture, snow, lots of it, guys. Feet of snow, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But I thought it was troubling a little bit that usually with this report, we have a map that shows us how many days are workable in the fields. And, sadly enough here, they've excluded that graphic in their crop report here for March 31st through April 6th. So we will keep our eyes out for the next report, and hopefully we get a better idea of what states are looking at, workable days in the fields, because this is getting crucial now. We're in mid-April, and we're talking about blizzard-like conditions. Take a look over here at weather.com. We are talking about another intense low pressure system that could flirt with an all-time April low pressure records in parts of the plains, according to data compiled by NOAA. It says that it's not clear the storm will be strong enough deemed as a bomb cyclone, since its atmospheric pressure might not meet the meteorological definition of bombogenesis, which is 24 millibar pressure drop in 24 hours. Blizzard warnings have been issued by the National Weather Service from parts of northeastern Colorado to southeastern Wyoming, western and central Nebraska, far northwest Kansas, out there in Norton, Kansas, Almena, Kansas. Y'all watch out there. Goodland as well. Various winter storm watches and warnings and winter weather advisory has also been posted from portions of the northern and central Rockies into the upper Mississippi Valley and the northern Great Lakes. The very UP part of Michigan, by the way, guys. So here is what the radar looked like at 6:30 Mountain Time, and you can see that the system is now starting to ramp up a little bit. Snow and rain, snow in the higher elevations, rain. And here is where we are expected to see this storm rapidly intensifying Wednesday night. And you guys see Rapid City, South Dakota. Now, okay, on the other side of this storm, by the way, we have severe weather to talk about, not just the snow and the blizzard. The blizzard-like conditions here, this is Thursday. This is where we'll see our storm at its peak. And places like South Dakota, what's already fields that are underwater, is going to get the possibility of 1 to 2 inches of snow per hour for several hours. So if it's a blizzard watch, there's a possibility we could see 6 to 10 inches in about 4 hours in this region that doesn't need any more moisture. Same thing with Nebraska. Again, Omaha. More rain. This will start off as rain and turn to snow as it moves through. Here's what they're thinking. And no, there's no high elevations out here in South Dakota. So there is a real possibility of 2 to 3 feet of snow in parts of South Dakota. Sioux Falls, you're on that fine line of possibly getting 2 feet of snow. It's anywhere from 5 inches to 2 feet. It just depends on which way this storm tracks. Duluth, 12 to 18 inches possible. Minneapolis, same thing. Rapid City, you're right near that 2 to 3 feet mark. Parts of Nebraska, looking at an average of 5 to 8 inches, up to a foot in most parts near North Platte. Lighter amounts of snow further east. And this is a big snowmaker for April 15th. In fact, we had a big storm like this last year at this point in time. And I'm pretty sure it was a big snowmaker as well. I don't know if it's going to be as big as this, but so before we go to the severe storm part of this, this is our flood situation right now with these rivers. And right there in the yellow, where we see current flood statuses, or with the, looking at the yellow where the moisture is going to be almost the heaviest out of this storm. You see all those purple dots. I mean, we are already in major flooding stages right here. And now tack on a possibility of 2 to 3 feet in this region right here of snow. Other areas minor to moderate. Of course, more major flooding here along Illinois, Missouri, parts of Indiana, central Indiana. Flipping over here to the severe side of this. Let's go ahead and read here. Severe thunderstorms could rumble from parts of the plains to the Midwest, east during later half of the week, ahead of a winter storm Wesley, which will also produce heavy snow and high winds. A strong jet stream and an intense area of surface low will favor the development of severe thunderstorms because moisture from the Gulf will be limited compared to what it can bring in the spring. But it might still be sufficient for the formation of severe thunderstorms with damaging straight line winds, large hail, and a few tornadoes. And here's where we're thinking Wednesday into Wednesday night: Sioux City, Omaha, Lincoln, Kearney, Nebraska, Hayes, Kansas, Salina, Kansas, near St. Joseph, Missouri, and Des Moines, Iowa. That's where we're going to see the very likelihood of severe weather. And then we moved into Thursday night. we're going to see severe weather threat in Indianapolis, South Bend, Chicago, Springfield, Evansville, Indiana, and Paducah, Kentucky. And boy, Paducah's had some weather this year. They've been in the news this winter for sleet, snow, ice, you name it, and getting started early with the severe storm front. And as this snowstorm winds down to the northern plains into Canada, more soaking heavy rains will enter the Midwest and the Ohio Valley up into the Northeast by Friday, where we could see anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain in some parts of the Northeast. So we're dealing with Wesley dumping a ton of snow in the northern plain states. The winds aren't going to be too friendly either. So we're going to be dealing with wind chills, gusts of 50 to 60 in Minneapolis. Kearney is looking at 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts with sustained winds of 20 to 35. But that area right there near Sioux City, South Dakota, is going to be an area to watch with wind gusts around 50 to 60. Definitely will qualify for a blizzard if that continues for 3 hours or more. So, and this is basically, Wesley is an example of a classic kitchen sink spring storm, because we're getting everything. We're getting tornadoes, hail, heavy rain, thunder snow, thunder sleet, thunderstorms, and blizzard-like conditions, with a significant amount of accumulation to come over the next several days. And the Grand Solar Minimum channel, we will definitely be watching this storm and keeping an eye on what it does over the next 24 to 48 hours. All right, let's take a look at the outlook forecast here. The GFS is very, very busy. This is Wednesday, April 10th. We have a system that we are experiencing here in the Northeast that is making its way out of here. The south is still getting moisture as it takes off, and here comes that winter storm Wesley across the northwest into the northern plains. And boy, does this thing get really ugly on Thursday, and I believe this is where we see the peak of the storm. And what I want to point out right here, this yellow right by the snow, that's areas that we're indicating possibility of thunder snow right in this area. Plus in this purple area, they're also looking at possibility of thunder sleet as well. As we continue to watch this snowstorm continue to grow, and these bars are tight, so you know we're going to see some high winds in this storm, but several hours of heavy snow will blanket across South Dakota, Minnesota, and Nebraska. I think you guys are going to get the worst of the storm. The far southeastern part of North Dakota as well will see significant snowfall, but this storm system takes its sweet old time, and look at this thing. This actually has updated for Friday, April 12th. Before the show, this was what it was showing. Now we are seeing an extremely large amount of moisture here in this region that was not here just a little bit ago. So the GFS is thinking that we're going to see some intense rain shower across the Ohio Valley through Michigan, and as it kind of peters out when it gets towards the northeast. But Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, you guys could see some heavy rain and some flash flooding from that as well. As we get into the weekend, this system moves out, clears out, but here comes our next system in Texas, another low pressure system. And the good news about this system is that it gave the South at least 4 days of dry weather before the next system came through. But this one's going to drop lots of moisture again. So this is where I was talking about this a minute ago, the map of how many days we're talking about, the moisture levels, and how it's not going to be dry enough for field work. That's all they mentioned, by the way, about field work. This tiny little paragraph right here. That's it. And they really talk about how some of the crops are doing really good and everything. They don't want to talk about, I don't know, it's just weird. They took out a whole map that shows us suitable work days. They give a very brief description on what's happening down in the south. But here we have more rain Sunday, April 14th. It doesn't stop here, guys. We got another system coming in from the northwest. This rainstorm intensifies on April 14th through parts of the area that just received massive amounts of rain. That will see more flooding continuing through the weekend into Monday. Heavy precipitation all across the deep south: Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, moderate rain in the Ohio Valley. And by the time this storm moves out on Monday, we're just going to see some moderate to heavy rain in the East Coast all the way through the Northeast as it'll try to get cold enough for snow to sneak in on the end of this. Buffalo, God Lord, April 16th, you might be looking at snow showers on April 16th, the middle of the month, and even upstate New York, the Albany region could see some light snow shower activity as well on October. That system moves out, and another low pressure system, once again, the same spot Wesley was in, is coming across the Central Plains. So 3 days after that big storm in the south, here comes another big storm across the plains in the form of rain and heavy rain. And while that's happening too, the south gets its act together and is pulling more moisture from the Gulf, and we are getting more heavy rain within 3 days after the last heavy rain system. So guys, I mean, this is a repeating pattern every other day. One system leaves, another one forms in almost the exact same spot. Here we are looking at April 26th, a very weak low pressure system the GFS is trying to tell us. But I mean, by the end of this map, we're looking at, heavy precipitation across most of the areas that have seen quite a bit. And this is impressive too. April 25th, the GFS is indicating quite a bit of snow here in the northwest. That's got to be overnight and in the upper elevations as well. So very active April. We are not going to lack any kind of moisture for the northern plains, the Midwest, and the deep south, the Ohio Valley, and I hate to say it, but really everywhere except for the Southwest, the four-quarter region, Northern California, and the Northwest, moisture, northern plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, Southeast, Northeast, East Coast. Very active April, if you ask me. Now, let's take a look at temperatures. Are we finally going to warm up? I can tell you guys, I am ready. It's been a long winter up here in New York, but I've been warned that. So, taking a look at temperatures, trying to get their acts together here. The south indicating to be a little bit warmer than once thought, but look at that trough, that drop right there. This right here, I think this is part of this high pressure system that's in Greenland right now that's creating a possible block. And we know when we have these Greenland blocks that we have these deep, sharp cold fronts that drop like this, and very sharp, very, very deep. So I think that might be the result of the high pressure sitting around Greenland at the time. And, it goes pretty deep in the south, but this shows that we recover a little bit quicker than what was thought earlier. And look at this, by the 16th of April, we're talking average or near above average temperatures for much of the country, from the Central Plains to the southern part of the United States, and also Ohio, Pennsylvania. By mid-month, you guys are going to start seeing a little bit warmer temperatures. But most of the middle part of the country is still in the 50s and 40s. And it looks like we get another drop in cold temperatures late Friday, April 19th, and a warm up across the eastern part of the United States, which I'm circling my calendar right now. So the Easter forecast is looking pretty solid as far as temperatures getting warm. And guys, this is what we look like on Easter this year. Very pleasant weather. Unfortunately, Northwest maybe not so much, and Montana, the Dakotas, but everywhere else pleasant, very, very pleasant Easter weather as we move towards the end of April. Still staying pretty warm. Indications that we see a weak cold front around the 23rd, but really this warmth is now kicking in. We are truly into the spring season. 60s and 70s more widespread by April 24th as of hoped. And look at this, some pretty dark red temperatures here. 90 degrees in South Carolina. If I'm not reading that wrong. Nope, that's a 90. So we are seeing some deep south heat coming up here at the end of April, which is about typical for this time of year for them. I mean, this is the deep south. Plus, if we're going to have a lot of moisture, humidity, buckle up down there in the south. We could see some record heat waves and also some pretty big storms. That Gulf moisture so far is being proven to be absolutely huge so far, as I'd say from the mid part of our country all the way through the East Coast and the Northeast is getting pummeled along with the Northwest. But right now we're seeing the focus of a lot of heavy precipitation from the Northwest to the middle part of the country into the South and through the East into the Northeast. I mean, that's literally 75% of the country right now. Take a look at El Nino. Is it El No yet? Well, we still see significant cooling across the 3-4 region. And if you look here, guys, this is barely staying together here. I mean, 28 is the threshold. All right, we were seeing 29, 27, 26, all the way back here. Not signs of El Nino. Maybe it's down here in this region, but right here, still seeing some cooling. Very weak. So what does that look like on the graphs? 0.688 above baseline. So each time we see a peak in the El Nino 3-4, it looks like it's trying to dip down a little bit further lower as far as temps. I could be wrong. Actually, I will take that back. Looking at this graph, it looks about even from the last drop that we had. So El Nino is doing what a weak Modaki El Nino does. And it is right now showing its ass. Clearly. Other than that, guys, I think that's going to do it for me tonight. Mari, did you have anything that you would like to add before we jump off the air tonight?
Well, I feel a little bit rusty, Jake. It takes getting used to getting back on and doing this stuff. You know, I just want to make fun of you like I always do. You know, I know this is your favorite part of the show, Jake. But I wanted our audience, all our viewers, to know when Jake was talking like Captain Kirk, that was because he had a really bad itch on his back, and I had to get it for him. Jake, you were really seriously like talking like Captain Kirk. It was really like,
well, it was really distracting that you couldn't hit the spot. So
well, I just like
I was making head gestures like, will you please take your hand further south? Anyway, what else you got for us tonight?
Okay, so enough of making fun of you. Everyone's awesome, talking about prepping, you know, what they're growing, what seeds they're stocking, what kind of seeds, sharing different resources about prepping. Everyone seems to be very much concerned about what's going on with our food supply, and they should be. It is alarming what's going on with our farms right now. I'd like to say thank you to Justin L. for stopping by and visiting us. He gave us a super chat. He's super nice, and it was good to see him in the chat. He hasn't been on much, and he just says he needs to be here more than he has been. Over 40 Pirate 1217, also thank you for the super chat. Very kind. We really appreciate your... I can't talk right now. We appreciate you, and welcome to the channel. Who else is in the chat? I don't know. A lot of new people. There's one viewer called 222 Mission, and we got 222 everywhere, don't we, Jake?
That's our call sign there.
Yeah. So welcome.
Shout out to Starman, even if he's not watching tonight. He's been in the background, behind the scenes, trying to keep me updated on what's going on. And, you know, if anything, the only thing I like following on Twitter, there's a few people out there I think that are useful out there. And TSM Solar Observations definitely is one of those guys.
I will share his link in the chat. His Twitter is awesome. He's the best of on Twitter for me.
Indeed.
Love that guy. So, all right. That's all I got, Jake.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for watching tonight. Thank you, Mari, for helping me get through another GSM News event. Guys, we will try to be back on, I think, sometime around Thursday or possibly Friday. Please bear with us as we are still working through the kinks and the setbacks that we possibly could have here in the next several days. But so far, so good. Tonight was uninterrupted, unlike the show that we did. Was it Friday night or Saturday night?
You know, it's all blur. We've been out without power on and off intermittently for the past 2 weeks. We decided to move. The issue right now is working. I guess they're still gonna come out and replace the transformer.
There's still work to be done.
Yeah, and there's all other things. So we found a place we'll be moving, and I can't wait because we'll almost, I think, have room for a studio where we could do a green screen.
Yep.
So stoked
Back
about
to that
that
stuff.
again.
Yep. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in once again, and stay tuned because we will talk soon.